Good. Well, welcome to Miami. Bienvenidos a Miami. It's great for me to be here with all of you. I feel very, very glad that you're all here. And I'm especially happy to be sharing the stage with these two remarkable young women. So I would like to welcome, they have so many titles and they do so many great things that I need to read them. So Aria Loberti, she's an actress, a PhD student, a Fulbright scholar, a human rights and climate change activist. So welcome. And Wawa Gatheru, she's a Kenyan-American climate storyteller. She's the creator of Black Girl Environmentalist, and she's a powerful voice for change. Welcome. So first of all, I have to say that the work that you both do is so inspiring and so powerful. And what I love the most is that you're raising awareness about this critical issue, but you do it in a positive way, in a way that brings hope and optimism. So when you think about the state of our planet, the health of our planet, my first question will be, what gives you hope?
I think for a lot of people, especially young people, sometimes we'll look at a statistic or we'll hear a story or an account of climate issues and we immediately are like, okay, little me cannot change something that detrimental and that scary. And I want to make change so badly, but how can I possibly do that? And I think it's been so validating for me to just listen. That's been the biggest lesson that I think I've learned in advocacy in general, but especially in climate advocacy and climate activism, is to make sure that I am listening. Because there are so many different layers from which we can attack this issue and from which we should attack this issue. And it doesn't just come from one person or just come from one intersection. So it's been so valuable for me to sustain my hope by realizing what a huge, diverse, educated, powerful, strong community there is, and that, you know, with all of those traits, anything is possible, and that is truly joyful. So many people like all of you get to come together, and you should thank yourself for being here, because you are a part of making that change. So thank you all, too.
Yeah. Well, what?
Yeah, so a lot of it has been through reframing. The way that I think about it, I think that Mother Earth is giving us very important feedback. She's telling us that the systems that we've relied on for so long aren't working, and that we need to reprioritize, and that we have a once-in-a-species long opportunity to restructure our world to finally be good for all of us. And there's this quote that I've taken a lot of solace in recently by the incredible Valerie Kerr, who I ran into the other day and fangirled. And she says, "What if this darkness is not the darkness of a tomb, but the darkness of a womb?" And it's with that quote that I think it presents all of us the question, what beautiful worlds can we build when we ideate what justice really looks like for all of us? And I think that's really exciting. I think a lot of people will hear climate narratives that are very doom-ridden and full of apocalyptic vibes, and there's a lot of truth in that, right? But the climate crisis is a story. It's a story of heartbreak and loss, but it's also a story that hasn't been written fully. Mariana Elise Hegler talks about how we're still in the writer's room, and I really believe that deeply. And there's a lot of joy and optimism that is in loving a better world into existence and being a part of that.
Yes, and what I think about that, I mean, that message is so powerful because when you look into the world with optimism, it's not that you are denying the reality that we know is a challenging one, but that you are really celebrating the advances and the milestones, and we really stay engaged with that. When we look at the headlines, when we talk about climate, it is sometimes information that is difficult to digest, especially for the youth and for children. There was a Lancet study that was done in 10 countries with more than 10,000 people and revealed that 60% were extremely worried about climate change, 60% of the youth, and more than half of them felt powerless or sad or anxious. So what would be your message for them? How can they transform those feelings into action, into opportunity, into optimism and hope?
I really hope that young people can realize their own power. I think often we receive this message of, you're young, you're naive, you don't hold power, you have to sit and learn, and then eventually you'll learn enough that you will be able to have the power, and then you'll be a leader. And I think, if I've learned anything in my ridiculous career path that Vanessa described, it's that, I'm never going to stop being a student. I'm always going to be learning things. But if I didn't just take the leap and learn as I went, I wouldn't be able to do anything. And that's really, really frustrating. So my message to young people would go out there and do it, and take up the space. And if sometimes you feel a little bit silly, that's okay. But asking questions is like, I ask a lot of questions. It probably annoys people, but you learn a lot by asking questions. And if someone is shutting your questions down, it's a sign to maybe move on and learn from someone new. But I think that's such a powerful tool. And ground into that knowledge. You have wisdom inside of you. You have life experience inside of you, even if you're really young. And you can bring that to the table. You can bring your own self to the table. That informs something. And we can grow into our expert status, and we can find our voice and our power, but we have to take up space. It's almost like a fake it till you make it. I'm doing that now, so.
You're amazing. You're doing an extraordinary work. Wawa.
I think that we really need to get comfortable with the uncomfortable feelings that we have around climate. Climate makes me feel a lot of things. A lot of fear, a lot of hopelessness, a lot of anger, Yeah. And there was a time where I felt like it was taboo to talk about those things, that I would only present as just being very joyful. And I think a part of that is because so many of us in the climate space were always asked, especially by those friends and family, how we do this work and what gives us hope. And no one really asks about what undergirds all of that. And I have found that in embracing a lot of those emotions, the fear, the grief, the hopelessness, that I've actually found a lot of community in being real about those things. And I've also realized that they're all rooted in a deep, radical love that I have for my community, that I have for myself, that I have for our collective ecosystems. And I think we also have to recognize that all those emotional responses are very natural. What's going on is very unnatural, but it's a very natural response to world systems that have placed people and planet on the back burner. And I think that as we restructure and as we think about how we can be optimistic and lean into joy, we have to recognize that those feelings are valid, work through them, and really root them in action. Because at the end of the day, I think that action is how we facilitate hope. I think hope is not something that you can borrow. Hope is a discipline. Hope is something that you earn through action. And I think being a part of that action and being a part of, as corny as it sounds, the change you want to see is really, really helpful in being able to at least be in the building spaces of what that better world actually can look like.
Wow, absolutely. So well said. Aria, I know that you have been an activist basically all your life, but I would like for you to share with us, when was the moment that you decided that you really wanted to raise awareness about climate issues?
It's been a very, it's been a lifelong thing for me, and sometimes it's very difficult. A lot of my activism started when I was little, and I don't actually remember a lot of it because I was so young. But I think my first big activist thing was when I was 4, and my parents and I went to our local state house, and I spoke up for my own educational rights because I was being abused and neglected in school, and I was discriminated against. I have low vision. And so it was really difficult to get services, but I was legally entitled, obviously, to receive them. So that's how it started. And then as I got older, I realized, I have parents who are educating me about the laws, and then I can go into this environment, and even if it's an environment that is hate-filled and discriminatory, that I can speak up for myself, and I can find my power, and I can try to make change for myself. I realized that's not the norm sometimes, and having the confidence and feeling the self-worth to do that fight is sometimes very difficult. So a lot of my work then started to become I want other kids to feel safe. And I always spoke out for education rights, not just for people with disabilities. I don't really do disability rights activism, but I really try to approach my activism from an intersectional human rights space. I think it's most important for us all to realize, like, you know, what we're passionate about, what we can connect to. And for me, it's education and literacy because of the background I came from. And then I became an academic, and it became even more important. But I realized that, you know, I came from a working class American family, and yeah, we didn't have a lot of resources or a lot of money, but we did what we could with them, and there's a lot of privilege, regardless of what people tell you, a lot of privilege that comes with being a working class American family. And I realized that there were so many kids who did not have access to safe education. Maybe it was because of a flood in their community. Maybe it was because of heat. We touched on that in our previous panel. It was amazing. Maybe it's because of access to clean water. Maybe the school has shut down. There are so many different reasons, and at the end of the day, it either comes down to political violence and instability or climate. And I think climate touches so many parts of our lives, even if sometimes we don't feel the immediacy in the here and now. And one of the most important things that I can do is realize that without the planet, we can't be educated, we can't be literate, we can't find ourselves and our freedom. And I needed to come back basically to the literal and figurative roots, and that's what inspired me to start to change the way I approached my work.
Wonderful. Well, we know that climate change is affecting everyone on the planet, but it's not affecting everyone equally. And minority communities of color, are the most vulnerable. Yeah. So how do you bring hope and optimism into your community?
Yeah, so the way that I think about it is, while we all might be weathering the same storm that is the climate crisis, we aren't all in the same boat. And so I approach my work at the intersections of representation and Black women and Black gender expansive folks. So I run a nonprofit called Black Girl Environmentalist. We are a national nonprofit that's working to address the pathway and retention issue that exists in the climate sector, particularly for Black girls and Black gender expansive individuals, with a particular focus on the early career end of things, so 0 to 10 years of experience. Folks of color make up nearly 40% of the US population, but we don't exceed a 12 to 16% green ceiling of representation. And those first 10 years are very critical for folks to get their foot in the door, but are also very critical for people to stay. So it's interesting because I find that I'm actually not doing any convincing of people having hope. I find a lot of hope in the spaces that I find myself in. I find that the harder struggle is convincing others, including myself, to embrace rest and to understand that rest is a radical stance. I think as women of color, as Black women, we hold so much. We are stewards of the land, we're stewards of our community, and oftentimes we're providing care for everyone else but ourselves. Mm-hmm. And how can we be of use to this movement? How can we be sustainably useful if we aren't taking care of ourselves? So I find that it's actually having conversations around expanding what environmental protection looks like. And yes, woods and water, yes, our cities and our communities, but also a holistic definition that includes our physical bodies, our emotional health, our physical health, and making sure that we're providing resources to folks so that they don't succumb to burnout. Because I don't think that our movement can lose anybody to burnout, but it happens time and time again. So with BGE, we're really trying to invest in folks, not only from professional development and providing them pathways and getting their foot in the door and different green internships and things of that sort, but also creating ecosystems of care and community so that folks have folks that they can lean on and rely on, and so that they know that in this movement, you should be able to take a step back, and so that others can take a step forward, because that's what reciprocity looks like, and that's what sustainability looks like in the context of this movement.
That's so amazing. That's so important. We cannot take care of something else if we don't take care of ourselves first. Aria, I know that you are a UNICEF ambassador and that you had the opportunity to travel to Kosovo a couple of months ago, and that you were able to see firsthand how women and children are more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Would you share with us your experience?
Yeah, of course. That was one of the most profound experiences, most special experiences of my life. And I'm really grateful to UNICEF. It was something that I was always advocating when I was little, and I aspired to be a part of that organization for so long. And I'm so grateful that my new career path has led me to them. And I went on this incredible trip. It's almost a year ago now. It's crazy. And I met so many youth leaders, and coincidentally, a majority of them were young women or girls. They were the leaders in championing, fixing the detrimental pollution problem in Kosovo. I think what really struck me is I arrived there, and I immediately could feel it on my skin. I felt it in my throat as I was breathing, and I saw it in the air, like black plumes of smoke in the air. It's really, it was really powerful. And I struggle a lot with explaining, whether it's to friends and family who are interested in these issues, whether it's in an environment like this, or whether it's with a policymaker. I struggle sometimes with capturing the immediacy of climate change and climate issues, because sometimes it does feel quite distant. And that gave me the tools, I think, to showcase that this is happening now. What the youth leaders there taught me was not only were they powerful in making change and actually driving policy change in their local communities, but they also were, they said that we just would watch as the trees around our community died. We watched our water get polluted. The quality, of health here is so poor. People are dying, and it's connected directly back to the pollution that they're breathing and drinking. And to be able to share that message with all of you and give voice to their story that they are so profoundly sharing in their community, I think the world really needs to hear it. And I think there are so many other stories like that around the world that really bring rise to the immediacy of the climate crisis, but also that we all can play a part in, how do we stop this from happening in the first place? How can we help them lift up their voices?
Wow, that's very powerful. And we unfortunately don't have more time, but I want to leave you with this. For me as a journalist in Telemundo Network, we have been doing the stories about climate change for the past 20 years. And truly, what really brings a lot of hope to us in the midst of everything that is happening are stories like Aria's and Wawa's and the job that you're doing creating awareness about it. It really comes to show how one individual can be so impactful and so powerful and can create such an unstoppable wave of change. And if we, each one, do our part, we can definitely solve this crisis. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you all for being here. Thank you.